the fallout from the ABC News Disney debate debacle continues to grow, and more will grow throughout the weekend. As Donald Trump announced yesterday, he will not be doing any more debates. And I think he's right in that choice. But I'll talk about it this hour, the debate that happened, the fallout with Rich Lowry, who is the editor-in-chief of National Review, and Andrew C. McCarthy, former federal prosecutor at the Southern District of New York, author, columnist, and, of course, co-contributor with Rich Lowry on the McCarthy Report podcast. Rich Lowry also hosts National Review's The Editors podcast. Both those podcasts will be mentioned in my Washington Post column on Monday as must listening to. Rich, good morning. I don't know that we have Andy yet. We're trying to find him. I think maybe the alarm clock didn't go off. How are you, Rich Lowry?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for getting up very early this morning. We keep trying various numbers for Andy, so he'll eventually join us. You heard my setup, Rich, and I'll play a little bit of tape yesterday. The very best dissection of that debate that I've heard came from the Ruthless podcast. Josh Holmes has negotiated these before. I've done 5 of these debates with the big networks. They were GOP presidential primary debates, 4 with CNN, 1 with NBC. I know how they're run. I know how they're scripted. I know how the preparation goes on, 30 to 50 people, top brass. Muir and Davis don't bear all of the weight for what happened. But what I heard, I listened to the McCarthy Report. Everyone should. I have not listened to the editor's emergency podcast yet. I will today. Your assessment, I know that Trump could have done better. He ought to have prepared more, all that stuff. What was your assessment of ABC's role?
It doesn't look any better in retrospect. It's horrible. You know, and I've been looking back over the transcript kind of in the cold light of day, a couple days afterwards. I don't think Trump's performance is any better. I think Harris is actually worse if you read it on the page. But the moderators are just awful. One thing I didn't notice in real time, towards the end, there was a bit of a fact check. It was kind of in between a fact check and a question to Harris after Trump had said, you know, she was sent over there to negotiate prior to the Ukraine war, and look what happened. The war happened anyway. And I think it was David Muir said, so you're saying she negotiated with Putin? Madam Vice President, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? And that's not what he said. He didn't say she met with Vladimir Putin. He says that she was sent over there, which she was. She met with Zelensky right before the invasion. So again, if you're going to fact check, you shouldn't fact check at all because it's too hard to do in real time. But if you do it, you got to be correct, one, and you can't do it just for one side. And that's what they did. And I was talking to a friend who was at CNN prior to the CNN Trump-Biden debate, and a bigwig from CNN came over and was chit-chatting and said, just watch. You just watch. After this debate, CNN will not be the story. I guarantee you, CNN will not be the story. Clearly, that was a directive from above. You're just moderators. It's not about you. You're not the candidate. At the very least, no one at ABC said that to these two and may have indeed said the opposite.
Now, Rich, you have been working around the clock because you've done the Editor's podcast, you've done the McCarthy Report podcast, you've been writing for National Review. You have a job, actually, to be the editor-in-chief of National Review, and you're back on the East Coast for some National Review thing. So you've been traveling all over the place. As you've talked with people, is this going to change opinions of the debate? Because the general review, as I've said to Martha McCall, Larry Kudlow on the air, upon further review, the call on the field has been reversed by me. My call on Tuesday night was, well, Trump lost the battle. Maybe he'll win the war because of the issues that he raised. Now I'm just thinking he may have won the debate because the verdict is kind of a rolling verdict. Do you think that is happening?
I think certainly among Republicans, this is the first thing they say is they talk about the moderation. And I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, and he says, Rich, we're still talking about Candy Crowley, a relatively minor intervention. I shouldn't say minor. It was a pretty big intervention in a foreign policy debate between Romney and Obama. And what else does anyone remember of that debate? I mean, this will be remembered a very long time for Republicans. It may be, Hugh, you've been involved in these negotiations and these debates. After every bad one, Republicans, we're never going back to the same mainstream model. Everyone, that's kind of the point of view everyone has at the moment. It's never stick before. Maybe it'll stick this time. I kind of doubt it, but that's the take among a lot of Republicans. I don't know whether that's enough to help Trump and the overall impression of who won this debate, because you also know how it works. People say he lost, and you ask people over time, and the defeat is magnified by hearing all the pundits and commentators say it. I'm not sure how much it matters. If you're still leading on the economy and the border and inflation, not sure how it matters. It matters very much. But she cleared a kind of bar the other night.
She did clear a bar. The question is, upon further review. In fact, let me play for you something I said to Larry Kudlow on Wednesday, cut number 19, which is real.
Your take on any of this?
Well, I want to say kudos on your riff, Larry, because the oldest cliche in news is also true. First reports are usually wrong.
Oh,
and the first reports last night are that, Trump lost, Harris won. Over the course of the day, I have been seeing three things emerge. Trump was okay. Not his best, but he did get in some haymakers. His closing statement was best. And anytime you're focusing on migration, you're winning. Kamala Harris, by contrast, was at her best, and it wasn't very good. And then third, and I think this matters a lot, it was the worst presidential debate in modern history. I do not believe even an independent or even a moderately fair Democrat will conclude other than that was an ambush. And as that settles in, as people study what Alex just referred to, the vice president did not answer one question, nor did ABC, which is owned by Disney, ask one question about China. Not one question. I was thinking of their theme parks, their merchandising.
Yep.
I think about the NBA. Didn't talk about China. Not one question about Iran. They did not bring up our hostage who was executed along with 5 others in Israel on the 10/7. I am so amazed at the unprofessionalism and the deeply disrespectful of America, as Katie mentioned, performance by ABC. I think by the weekend, Trump may have won this. It's a moving river of opinion that gathers force. And at this point, I wanted more. I wanted perfection. But that was the best the vice president's ever going to be. She's not very good.
Rich, you can't hurt my feelings. Am I wish casting there, or might that happen?
I'm not sure that's going to happen with the general public. Among Republicans, this is clearly, this process is ongoing and began during the debate. It was one of the top takeaways anyone had. It was just obvious to everyone where these moderators were coming from, and they weren't upholding their professional obligation to be neutral interlocutors and kind of ask the question. And unless the question wasn't answered, there needed to be a follow-up to fade back into the bush like the Homer Simpson meme. But the follow-ups for Kamala obviously weren't there. The very first question, are people better off than they were 4 years ago? She didn't answer it. She didn't come close to answering it. She didn't even try to answer it. And she got on to tariffs by calling the Trump tariffs, a tax. And immediately Trump responded to that. And unfortunately, that sort of set the pace for what the whole night was like. She was never challenged by the moderators, and Trump didn't do enough to call her out or to call out the moderators in real time. Some of the most effective debate performances, yes, in the primary contest, not in a general election, have been calling out moderators. Newt Gingrich in South Carolina, famously, against our friend Juan Williams. So I think this is something that would have helped Trump to call out in real time.
I heard you mention that, and when Andy joins us, when we find him, and he confirmed to me last night he was going to join us, but we might have his wrong number, he might not have our number. I'm going to stipulate that the former president ought to have called out the moderators. The way that Newt did, I believe you brought this up in 2012. Newt called out John King. And it, in fact, began a new way of engaging with moderators. Yeah. Did you mention that on the McCarthy report yesterday? Was that you?
I think it may have been. I may have said it. Andy may have said it. But that was an electric moment. That won South Carolina for Newt Gingrich. But Trump didn't do it.